is Narradan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome! It is time for our first episode of an inaugural series, Introductions to the World of Darkness. So what is this series? Well, I'll be going on various characters and individuals throughout the World of Darkness and letting you know a little bit about them, their history, some things you want to know about them, and why they might be important to know about. So let's start, of course, with the most important of all vampires to know about. Of course, Cain. So, let's start talking about Cain in the World of Darkness, in Vampire the Masquerade. Of course, within the mythos of Vampire the Masquerade, Cain is the first, the foremost, the most powerful of all vampires, progenitor of their race. He matches with his, biblical namesake, the Abel of the Cain and Abel myth. He is brother to Abel and to Seth. He is son of Adam and Eve. And much like in the biblical namesake, the World of Darkness's version of what could be referred to as God and his angels cursed him upon his murder of his brother. With the transition from mortal to vampire, an E was added to the end of his name, so it's spelled Caine. And before the Camarilla came into existence, vampires referred to themselves as Cainites. Now, Cain is thought to at least continue to exist even in towards modern days, but his actual age is estimated to be from around 200,000 years ago. That's assumed about when he was born, and he of course is the first vampire, so his progeny is all of the second generation. Now the majority of history that is known about him are covered in 4 texts: the Book of Nod, the Urusirian fragments, the Lilithian, and the Luciferian. These 4 books all tell similar stories about Cain's actual origins, but they all kind of choose different ways of describing his actual motivations for the murder of his brother. It is agreed upon that, yes, Cain murdered Abel. Now, the fact is, there's a popular idealism between these that he granted himself a gift of a delusion that he was murdering his brother out of love, when it truly was out of, hate for his brother. And that act of shame is what led to him becoming an outcast, becoming the creature he would be. Some Gangrel scholars kind of think that this storyline, the legend that's behind it, is actually talking about hunters versus farmers in a way. Now, the most popular story is that of the Land of Nod. This one tells of a farmer named Cain. The story tells of Cain offering fruits and such as a sacrifice to God, and then Abel, his brother, offering his finest animals to God, and this God would favor Abel. Of course, this drove Cain to seek out the favor of this God and sacrifice Abel upon the same altar as a way of gaining favor. But this course did not. Cain was punished, and his father, his creator, his God, cursed him with a powerful mark and cast him out upon what was known as the Land of Nod. Now Cain wandered the Land of Nod until he encountered Lilith. Lilith saw upon him the mark, the strange mark that had been put upon him, and the darkness that swirled upon it. She thought him a divine being, but could sense that there was something different about this darkness that swirled within him. She kind of welcomed Cain into the warmth of her home, and looked after him. She revealed that she was in fact Adam, Cain's father's first wife, but then the two of them became, lovers. Cain began to sense that she had a powerful magic and hoped that he could use that to help his predicament, so he begged for her help, and so she did an awakening ritual for him, to awaken some of his abilities, and cut herself a bowl of the blood within her, and fed it to Cain. Upon imbibing Lilith's blood, 3 angels came upon Cain, each of them offering him salvation, if he would repent for the act that he did, of killing his brother Abel. 3 times he resisted, and each time brought a new curse to his form. The curse of vulnerability to fire, vulnerability to sunlight, and the beast within them hungering for the blood of others. Then a 4th angel came, though, an angel that offered nothing of the similar, but instead gave the path of Galkana to him and his kin. This was him and his kin would face these curses. After all of this, Cain was officially awakened, and he mastered the disciplines of celerity, potence, fortitude, obfuscate, dominate, presence, protein, animalism, and auspex. These 9 basic disciplines became the central point of vampirism and their powers. He became aware of the path of blood, the path of which all other vampire paths stem, and so he broke his bond with Lilith, and left, and wandered again. He wandered for an eternity in a loneliness, until that loneliness and sorrow for the acts that he had done drove him back to the lands of man, to seek a kind of solitude in amongst them. But his mark and his strange powers drove them almost to worship him as a god. Cain then settled in a small agrarian community known as Urbor. It was here, in what would become known as the First City, that he took on his first title, the Dark Father. This place, this area, was settled by the children of Seth. Seth being the 3rd child of Adam and Eve, supposedly the bringer of man. So these were all his relatives in a way. And it was ruled over by a king known as Enoch. Enoch saw the strength of it, and all those that came to the city saw the strength and powers of Cain. And so Enoch gave up his kingship to Cain, to rule over them all. Now, one popular story tells of the first of the 2nd generation. This is one by Toreadors. This tells of 2 lovers who had a embrace together, who came together under Cain's watchful eye. And the 2 lovers were in such an eternal love that Cain was impressed by it. His own sins and darkness. He wished to somehow bring some light to this darkness. And so he made both of these lovers into his children, so that their love may be eternal. But the 2 of them found a depression when they discovered that they could no longer bear children once they were embraced, once they became similar to Cain. So the 2 of them decided to find final death together and wandered out of the sunlight. And so for a long period of time, Cain sorrowed and decided not to embrace anymore. But that is when King Enoch comes to Cain. Enoch desired some of that power, and though Cain still was reluctant because the decades ago what happened to the Lowers, eventually he broke down, and the beast within, his craving for blood and a craving to almost spread himself, drew him to embrace Enoch. But Enoch sought that he would have vampiric siblings of his own, and so this eventually led to another 2 of the 2nd generation, Irad and Zillah. And so this city became a new booming metropolis under these childe, and Cain decided to name the city after his first childe, the one who had put him in this position, Enoch. Zillah, which he had embraced, he found a beauty in, a desire to be with, but she shunned him in that retrospect. And so he pursued her the best he can until a strange crone with a dark magic came to him. She told him a way that he could bond her, Zillah, to him, so that she could be his, and tricked Cain into embracing her. The crone then used the power of the first blood bond to control Cain in a way. The power of the blood bond was though used by Cain and had him marry effectively Zillah. Now for a year and a day, he was under the control of the crone. But eventually he talked about having another one of his children wayward in a way. So the crone figured out a way to fashion a stake of wood, a branch of a gopher tree, sharpened into a stake, driven into the heart to rend them unable to move. And so Cain just did that to the crone, breaking the blood bond and leaving her to the sunrise, leaving him down to once again 3 childe. Those 3 learned of the way to embrace others and to create the 3rd generation. And once this 3rd generation was born, though, Cain denied all others. He said that that should be the last generation to be born upon him. No more shall they embrace below there. They, of course, supposedly obeyed him. And this time period became an area of prosperity, an age of prosperity within the city, the first city of vampires. The first city thrived in a powerful economy and technology. Cain had seen much of the cradle of civilization and brought with it back much of the technology. Things like the wheel from Sumeria. Other various of these ancient technologies by our standards were brought in. He also saw to assign and place powerful things like expertise grown and perfect groves to various farmers, so that not only did the technology shine, but the economy. It was a rich and flourishing metropolis under Cain. And the third generation, the antediluvians, saw seek to make shrines and statues and temples in order to name to Cain, and even built a massive 5-level palace in his name, in which he would sit upon an ivory throne over his city. But the deluge changed everything. It wiped out all of his childe, and all of the children of Seth as far as he knew, leaving him to once again be alone and to wander. The city of Enoch was gone. His grandchild, the antediluvians, sought him out, sought to have him return with them, but he showed them away. And so they killed the second generation, and built the second city. When he learned of what happened, he found them in their second city, and he cursed every last one of them with the clan weaknesses we know of today. Now, Cain is said to eventually return to the vampires in an open way. One of the ways is suspected to be Gehenna, the end of all the vampiric races, where he will return and judge the antediluvians and all of their children for the actions they have done, to judge them in the way he sees fit. Certain Sabbat lore tells that Cain will arrive to strike down the antediluvians when Gehenna begins. And beyond that, the Camarilla, however, though, do everything to deny the existence of Cain, including destroying any text and material that speaks of him. This ends up just creating more of a skepticism amongst modern kindred about what really happened with Cain and what his true history is. Now, Cain's capabilities are something that are hard to break down. We know antediluvians are very powerful, having a mastery of a discipline, rank 10 in any discipline, and Cain himself is 2 generations away from that, so he has to have a mastery beyond even what the antediluvians have. It is up to a storyteller, if they are using Cain in some kind of way, to truly determine the depths of his power when it comes to this sort of thing. Because it really is outside what the storyteller system has to model Cain himself and to put him into the system. It is quite impossible. It is said that Cain can sense when any of his childe, down the generations, is using one of their disciplines on a human or on each other. He can also cancel out any discipline that is being used, if he should so choose. It was his true, total mastery of every discipline that kept Cain in power back in those old days, truly, because it made sure he had the ability to keep all the other kindred in line. It is said that Cain had the ability to create a discipline on the spot, as he should need it. This is said to be the origination of thaumaturgy and other similar blood-type magics and magics that exist. And also the origin of several paths. His ability to just create. Almost everything that you can think about Cain boils down to things that have been said in almost biblical tradition. One of the major abilities he has is that any harm befallen to Cain is returned 7-fold to the one that damaged him. Think about that. Cain is also marked with the sign of God's displeasure, something that is quite obvious. Now, when originally White Wolf kind of did their destruction of Old World of Darkness, the classic World of Darkness, to create the New World of Darkness, until they brought both of them back as separate systems, there was novels and information that talked about a little bit of what was going on within Gehenna's possible scenarios of the end of vampire kind. And the return of Cain is mentioned in a few of them. So, since this mostly has been retconned, we don't see him actually appearing in the new breakdown of both classic World of Darkness, the World of Darkness as it is, and the New World of Darkness. But we do see information about him existing. Now, the most common interpretations of Cain are as the Dark Father or the Fisher King, both which have connotations in the character, yes. Though during the 13th century he was worshipped as almost this trinity, the Dark Father, the Wanderer, and the Dark Tyrant. It is important to note that there are some vampires from more pagan backgrounds that refer to vampiric forefathers with similar names to Cain, especially those of a Norse tradition that talks of someone cursed by Odin. And upon the Libans in Africa, another one who courted the daughter of the sun and ended up in his cursed position. So you can see there is words almost of Cain in other cultures too, even non-Judeo-Christian based ones. But that's it for today. I've introduced you to Cain, the forefather of vampires. Now, an important part about this is there is a degree of religious myth in here. This matches with Judo-Christianity quite strongly. Now, if you dive deep into what the essence of what World of Darkness and gods and stuff is, there's lots of interpretation if it's more the actual God we see in Judo-Christian religions, or it's something else entirely. Depends on which game you're looking at. Vampires often look at it as there is a powerful thing like a god. But regardless, though, Cain is a figure who is cursed by a powerful being he served. More likely what a god would be in this case, akin to one, at very least, and became the progenitor of vampires. He wandered the land of Nod, as written in the Book of Nod, a book done by Cain. At least in part, as it is excerpts of many different ancient texts brought together. It is thought that some of those are Cain's words. He is a powerful progenitor, which acts as more of a fairy tale in oftentimes the stories of the various vampires. Is he real? Hard to say. We know of the antediluvians, and they would be able to tell the truth, but they sleep. The fourth generation would never have seen him. And they're the only ones still active, occasionally, you can really check in with. So it's really hard to say what the truth of the matter is, of the first and second cities. There was a figure in the first city, known as Cain, the progenitor of them all. Its true origin, who can really say? But I hope you're having a great day. If you've ever used Cain in a vampire game, let me know. That's an interesting one I've considered before, but never really thought of a good way to do it. Regardless, though, until the next time, I bid you farewell.